This is an introduction to matrices. So in this lesson, we're going to identify rows and columns of a matrix. We're going to identify the dimensions, and we're going to write systems of equations in matrix form. A matrix is a collection of numbers without variables and without numbers. So if you look below, I have a matrix. So it is this collection of numbers. It's split into rows and columns. So if you can see, the rows go from left to right and the columns go up and down. So it's a little covered up in the video, but it says in your notebook, highlight the rows in blue. So again, rows go from left to right. So if I do D, I have a row of 1, 3, 5, a row of 7, 9, 11, and a row of 13, 15, 17. That also says highlight the columns in yellow. So the columns in D are up and down. So that's 1, 7, 13, 3, 9, 15, 5, 11, 17. So now you try to do the rows and columns in E. So pause the video for a few seconds and try to highlight rows and columns for matrix E. If you do the rows for E, remember those go left to right. So I would have a row that's 2, a row that's 4, a row that's 6, and a row that's 8. And the columns would be all of those numbers, so up and down, 2, 4, 6, 8. The dimension of a matrix describes the number of rows and columns in a matrix. And so you want to set this up so that it's rows by columns. So for this first one, I have 1 row and then there's 3 columns. So it would be 1 by 3. In matrix B, I have 2 rows and 2 columns. So it would be 2 by 2. And then for C, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows by 2 columns. So it's 4 by 2. Each element of a matrix can be described using a certain spot. So if you look here, I have A1. So this 1 stands for a row, and 3 stands for a column. So if you would look where that's in row 1. So row 1 is here, and column 3 is here. And so where they overlap is where I would find that element. So row 1, column 3. This next example says, in the matrix below, circle each element in the indicated color. So the first one says for A12, red. So remember, the 12 means the row is 1, the column is 2. So this is row 1, this is column 2, and so if you look, where those overlap is that -4, so -4 would be that element. The next one wants us to do it in blue, so again, the row is 4, so row 4, the column's 1. So if you look, I overlapped at 7, so I want to circle that in blue. For the next one, the row is 3, the column is 1, and I want to circle that in green, and so the overlap there would be -5. So take a couple seconds and try this last one on your own. and circle this one in yellow. So for this last one, we have row 2, column 3. The overlap is at 0, you can see. And I want to circle that in yellow. And so that is how you figure out different elements. For this example, it says in the matrix below, give the element name for the digit indicated. So remember, we want to put the letter. So this matrix is called A. And then we want to put our row number and then our column number. So if you look at 3, 3 is in the first row. So this is row 1. And it's in the third column. So when I name this, I would call it A, row number 1, column number 3. So A and then the little 13. For number 8, it's in row 3. In the second column. So when I name this one, it would be A, row 3, column 2, so A32. For 6, it's in row 2, and it's in column 3, so it would be A2, 3. Try this last one, so try to name the element name for number 5. So hopefully for this last one, you started with an A. You see that it's in row 2, and it's in column 2, so A22. We can write a system of equations in matrix form, and so how we do that is we are just going to take these numbers, so A, B, C, and D, E, F just represent numbers in our system, and we are just going to plug those into a matrix as shown below. So for the first example, it says rewrite each system as 2 different matrices. So I'm going to start with the little bracket. On this first equation, I have a 2, and then this number is technically a -1, and I also have a 0. So those are all going to go in the first row. So I'm going to have a 2, a -1, then we have this line that indicates the equal part, and we have a 0. For the second equation, I have a 1 here technically. I also have a 4, and then I have an equals 5. So when I fill that in, I have 1, 4, 5. So that's how I would write my first one. So now go ahead and try to write the second one. So fill in all your numbers. So hopefully you wrote out in the first row 2, 7, 2, 3, 5, -8.